The boy walked to center stage with a curved brace on his leg and a small cassette tape held tight in both hands. He held it up to the judges. "This is the only thing my parents left me," he said. "It's their voices. I taught myself their song off this tape. Now I want to sing it out loud." Jonathan Vale opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time in 15 seasons, the sharpest voice on television had gone completely silent. Another Tuesday night. The Meridian Theater. 3,000 people, packed in tight. Cameras rolling, millions watching from home. Another hopeful contestant, stepping into the light. Jonathan Vale sat behind the judge's table. Black shirt, arms crossed. That familiar look of measured skepticism. He had seen 10,000 auditions. He expected nothing new. That was the job. Sit, watch, judge, move on. Backstage, kids ran their warm-ups, shaking out their hands. Always nerves. Vale had watched thousands do it and stopped noticing years ago. He looked at the next name on his sheet. One line beside it, from a producer. "Foster care. Go easy." Vale almost rolled his eyes. He didn't do easy. The boy who came out walked with care. A brace ran up one leg, the kind worn since childhood. Part of him now. 12, maybe 13. A second-hand jacket, sleeves a touch too long. Nothing flashy. Nothing rehearsed. Just a boy, both hands wrapped around something small, walking to the microphone like the object mattered more than the moment. Marcus Reyes came out to meet him. "Hey there, what's your name?" "Sam Whitfield." "How old are you, Sam?" 12, "and what are you going to do for us tonight?" "I'm going to sing a song." It was my parents' song. A warm murmur moved through the crowd. Vale glanced up. "Are your parents here tonight, Sam?" Marcus asked. The question landed like a stone in still water. Sam's hands tightened around the small thing he was holding. "No," he said. "They passed when I was little. I don't really remember them." He paused. "I've been in foster homes since I was 4. The audience made a sound, not applause, something quieter. A breath, held all at once. "I'm sorry, Sam," Marcus said gently. "That's a lot for anybody." Sam nodded, matter of fact. He'd made his peace with the facts of his life a long time ago. "They left me one thing," he said. "Just one. It got passed along with me, home to home, in a plastic bag with my name on it." He lifted his hands. In them was an old cassette tape, the label worn soft, the plastic scratched to a fog. "It's a tape," Sam said. "Homemade, my parents singing together. Somebody recorded them once, at home, being happy." Vale set his pen down. He was listening now. Fully the way he rarely listened to anyone. "I don't have a photo of them," Sam said. "I don't have their faces. But I have their voices. On here." He held the tape a little higher. "I played it so many times I was scared it would wear out. So I stopped playing it, and I learned their song by heart instead." He looked out toward the lights. "This is the only thing my parents left me," he said. "It's their voices. I taught myself their song off this tape. Now I want to sing it out loud." The exact words he'd opened with. The whole theater felt them land. Alina Cho's hand went to her mouth. David Okafor leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Priya Anand had gone completely still, watching Vale instead of the stage. And Jonathan Vale had gone white. He was staring at the small tape in the boy's hands like it had reached across 20 years and grabbed him by the throat. He tried to speak. His mouth moved. Nothing came. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened 20 years earlier. Jonathan Vale was not always the man behind the desk. Before the fame, before the shows, before his name meant anything at all. He ran a tiny recording studio out of a converted garage, 2 microphones, a second-hand board held together with tape and hope. He charged next to nothing. because next to nothing was what his clients had. Most of them were never going to be stars. He knew that. They knew it too. They came anyway, on weekends, in their good clothes, to hear their own voices played back just once in their lives. One Saturday, a young couple came in. Newlyweds, the Whitfields. They didn't want a demo. They didn't have dreams of a record deal. They wanted one song. Just one. The song from their wedding. They wanted it recorded, the two of them singing it together, so they'd always have it. "We're going to play it on our anniversary every year," the young wife said, beaming, "and someday for our kids." Jonathan almost turned them away. It wasn't real studio work. It didn't pay. He was busy chasing clients who might actually go somewhere. But something about them stopped him. The way the husband watched his wife when she sang. The way they held hands between takes. They weren't good singers. Not really. But they were so plainly, completely in love that the room felt warmer for it. Jonathan recorded their song. It took an afternoon. When they finished, the young husband asked a shy question. Was there any way to get it onto a little cassette, something they could play at home? Jonathan made them a copy. He handed it over in a paper sleeve. "How much do we owe you?" the husband asked, reaching for a thin wallet. Jonathan looked at the two of them, at how happy one song had made them. "Nothing," he said. "Call it a wedding present." They thanked him like he'd handed them the world. They walked out into the afternoon, holding hands, holding their one song. Jonathan never saw them again. He didn't even keep the master. Just a young couple, one afternoon, one homemade tape, gone before he'd finished cleaning up. The garage studio closed a year later. Jonathan moved on, moved up, moved into the loud, bright life that swallowed the memory hole. He forgot the Whitfields entirely. There was no reason to remember. 100 people had passed through that garage. They were only 2. He never knew what happened to them. He never knew about the young couple who died in an accident a few years later. He never knew they'd had a son. He never knew that when the boy was gathered up by the state, almost nothing came with him. Almost nothing. One plastic bag, and inside it, one homemade cassette. 2 voices singing a wedding song in a converted garage. Recorded free as a wedding present by a man who would go on to become famous and forget he ever did it. He thought that afternoon was gone forever. He was wrong. He thought that was the end of the story. Until tonight. Because Jonathan Vale knew that tape. He knew the exact shape of that worn label. He had written on it himself 20 years ago in a garage with a marker that was running dry. He couldn't read it from here. He didn't need to. He knew what it said, because his own hand had written it. Whitfield, their song. He came around the long desk before he'd decided to move. He crossed onto the stage floor, something he'd done exactly twice before in 15 seasons. He walked to the boy, and he asked, in a voice that barely worked, if he could see the tape. Sam hesitated. It was the only piece of his parents he had. Then something in the man's face made him hold it out. Jonathan turned it over in his hands. The dry marker letters. His own handwriting, 2 decades old. "Sam," he said, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to believe me." "Okay," the boy said, uncertain. "I made this tape," Jonathan said. 20 years ago, in a little garage studio I used to run. The theater went utterly silent. 3,000 people, not one sound. Sam went very still. "You... what?" "Your parents came to me," Jonathan said, his voice breaking. Newlyweds, they wanted one song, the song from their wedding. They wanted to be able to play it every anniversary, and someday for their kids. He held the tape gently, like it might break. I recorded them. It took an afternoon. And I have never in my life seen two people so in love. Tears ran openly down the face of the man 3 seasons of contestants had nicknamed Unshakable. The judge who built his entire reputation on never once showing his hand. They tried to pay me, Jonathan said. I wouldn't let them. I told them it was a wedding present. His voice cracked apart. I didn't know. Sam, I swear to you, I never knew what happened to them. If I had known there was a boy, if I had known you were out there with nothing but this, he couldn't finish it. Sam's eyes had filled. You met them, he whispered. You actually met them. You heard their real voices. Not on a tape. Their real voices. I did, Jonathan said. And I can tell you something no recording ever could. They laughed constantly. Your father couldn't take his eyes off your mother. And when they sang that song together, off-key, holding hands, it was the most beautiful thing I recorded in that garage in 5 years. He knelt down to the boy's level. They wanted that song for you. They said so. Someday. For our kids. You were the someday, Sam. You are exactly who that tape was always for. Sam Whitfield stepped forward and threw his arms around the man's neck, the little cassette pressed safe between them, and Jonathan Vale held Sam the way you hold a piece of something you thought was lost for good. If a story like this one has ever moved you, share it, subscribe, so you never miss another. After a long moment, Sam pulled back and wiped his face. He looked down at the tape in his hand. Then at the microphone. I'm ready, he said. I want them to hear me do it out loud. Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. Jonathan carefully handed the tape back. Sam tucked it into his jacket, right over his heart. He stepped to the microphone. And he nodded to the band. The music came in soft and warm. And Sam Whitfield sang his parents' wedding song. The song 2 young people recorded in a garage before he was born. The one thing they left him, learned by heart off a tape too precious to keep playing. His voice shook on the first line. It steadied by the second. The way a voice does when it finally gives back something it has carried alone for a very long time. He sang it out loud, into a room full of strangers, for 2 people he couldn't remember, but had never once stopped loving. By the final note, there wasn't a dry eye in the building. Jonathan Vale reached out. He pressed the golden button. Without a single word, gold confetti fell over a boy in a second-hand jacket with a cassette tape held over his heart. Jonathan Vale did something else too, in the weeks after. He found the old master reels from the garage, boxed in a storage unit he'd been paying for and forgetting for years. Most were ruined. But not all, and on a hunch he searched them, tape by tape, until he found it. The Whitfields, their real voices, in far better quality than a worn cassette could hold. He had it restored. Cleaned, saved forever. And he gave Sam back his parents' voices, clear and warm, as if the 2 of them had just stopped singing. Sam Whitfield was adopted the following year by a family who first heard about him from a story that traveled the world. Jonathan Vale started a foundation that sprang, helping kids in foster care hold on to the few pieces of family they have left. This time, everyone knew whose name was on it. He named it after 2 people he met once, for one afternoon, 20 years ago. He keeps a cassette tape on his desk now, not the original. That belongs to Sam. A copy of a wedding song recorded free as a present by a younger man who had no idea what he was really giving. Some parents leave their children fortunes. The Whitfields left theirs a single song, and it turned out to be enough to build a whole life on.